All right, we're going to be discussing the mechanics from a front view, and we're just going to concern ourselves with our path or the flow down the mound. So we already got these videos to the top of these guys' leg lifts. Obviously, every pitcher comes down the mound at different rates, different speeds. However, to make these guys flow together, I have changed up their speeds to fit. So what we're going to see is that we got Jerry Jones over here getting that front leg fully extended and really sitting into his delivery. We got Greinke, who's got his knee, which is going to be further back towards second base than his foot is. He's really taking this front knee and kind of curling it back so that his front hip stays closed. And Kirby is going like Jones here with his front leg, but he's keeping it in a more bent position rather than kicking it straight out like Jones. But what we do notice is no matter how these guys load into their back hips, getting down into their legs, engaging their lower halves, what do we notice? We notice where the glove is going. And that's to help them be able to see over their front shoulder. They want to be looking down the barrel of their shoulder, because the longer we can be looking here over this shoulder as we proceed down the mound. Obviously, we've gotten back to center, but look, we're still looking right over that shoulder. Still looking right over that shoulder. Still looking right over that front shoulder. The longer we can do that into our moment of foot strike, bam, bam, we can see front shoulder, and our head is still trying to fight to keep that front, or rather our front shoulder is still fighting to stay above our chin. The front shoulder is still fighting to stay in above the chin. The front shoulder is still fighting to stay in above the chin. And when we do that, we can see that the back hip now has been able to come through, exposing the belt buckle to the batter, to our catcher, but preventing, because that front shoulder's fought to stay in so that we continue to look over it. Look what that's done with our chest. It's kept it squared up, squared up, squared up, as that lower half has been able to fire, and there lies our upper lower half separation that we're trying to achieve. And now here comes the most important part. Getting into this position is key for both our power production, our ability to throw the baseball with our body, thus reducing the amount of stress that's going on through our arm during that delivery, and helping ensure, this wasn't the straightest line here, helping ensure our energy continues to flow to the catcher. All right, we can see that head staying there, that head staying there. Kirby's fighting to keep it in there. And you can see he's fighting to keep it in there because it did not go more out there. So we're rotating that back shoulder. We're rotating that back shoulder forward. forward, forward, forward. So that way all of our power can be flung through those fingers, out through that ball, forward. If we watch that again without any interruption, into foot strike, out of foot strike. Everything staying in line with our target. And then noticing as they're getting into release, where are those chin and chests going? To the target. To the target. The angle of our trunk, this mass from our shoulders through our waist, our trunk right now is upright. It's above our hips. In relation to the ground, it's in a 90-degree angle. As we get into release, those trunks in relation to the ground are no longer up here trying to throw the baseball. Instead, in relation to the ground, these trunks of these elite throwers of the baseball, both in terms of command, the best to ever do it, in terms of longevity and success, one of the best to do it, and an upcomer with elite velocity and potential to be an all-star. Every one of their trunks at release went from being up here at foot strike to out here at release, bringing that energy down the mound, but most importantly, towards our target. And that's something that we're able to see even easier and more clearly in the side view videos. All right, so if we kind of take this back once more and we see these arm slots, we'd say, boom. Oops, let me draw a better line than that. Right, we're at a high three-quarter, three-quarter. We are in a same thing, three-quarter, high three-quarter. Same thing here, right? So these are some of your most common arm slots are the three-quarter to high three-quarter arm slot. And then what we'll look at next here are some guys that are in that lower three-quarter tier. So we'll let, we got Luis Hill, Kyle Harrison, and Carl Crawford. All right, so the same thing, moment of that foot strike, we can see that they're still fighting to keep that front shoulder in, keep that front shoulder in, fighting to keep that front shoulder in, and then coming to release and through, we can see how those heads are fighting to stay in. Luis Hill a little bit outside, but we can see through release, bam, it's there, it's there, it's there, it's there. Now it's out, which is no big deal. It's already stable for long enough post-release, bam, that he could do a cartwheel over here if he wanted to after. So fighting to keep that front shoulder in, And by doing that, the shoulders have stayed squared up, and with a good lower half timing and pattern sequencing, we got the back hip to have come forward, exposing that belt buckle to the batter, creating that upper and lower half separation that we're trying to seek in order to achieve higher velocities and minimize the stress that's put on our arm during these high intense and continuous throws. If we then take these guys into their moment of release, we got that same concept that we did earlier, and we can see here's our low 3/4, even getting closer, some would say, to even true sidearm. We have that low 3/4, and we got that 3/4 to low 3/4. But what we can notice is all the same with those different arm slots, but the most common arm slots in our game, all these guys are fitting the same bill in their own unique ways, but these important key points are all very much getting checked off by each, no matter what. All right, so what we're going to be discussing here is the body's position that we get to the moment our front foot gets into the ground for the very first time. And this moment in time is called our foot strike. So we are going to be talking about the moment when, boom, those feet get into the ground for the very first time. And again, that's called our foot strike position. At foot strike, we want to be looking at our body in two halves. Our upper half and our lower half. At foot strike, we want our lower half to have rotated forward towards our target. And a useful thing to look at to know if we've been able to do that is the belt buckle. And is that belt buckle facing the target? If the belt buckle is facing the target, it's a pretty good chance that we have successfully rotated both the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip. When we're able to rotate the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip, as our front foot is getting into that foot strike position, we will successfully be able to get our belt buckle driving towards the target. If we specifically take a look at just the back foot of these four guys, let's watch as they are rotating that back leg, how that back foot is rotating. At this point in time, all four guys still have their entire foot flat onto the ground, and then they begin to rotate through or over top of their big toe. Their foot kind of rolls, folds over, or drives forward. And as the foot does that motion, we now shift our view to the back knee and know as the foot is rolling over the big toe that the back knee is also rotating forward. And how those two things, the back foot and the back knee, are working together. We can also see that as we go to drive and rotate that back foot and back knee, how they do that while they gain ground down the mound and towards their catcher. So this is the difference between rotating our bodies forward, or a word for that is driving ourselves forward, versus just rotating in place. If we were just rotating in place, our bodies would not be able to gain this ground down the mound. Our bodies wouldn't be able to accelerate our power and energy down the mound. And we can then look and see that the foot has the toe, and then the heel is in front of the toe, meaning we have rotated forward. We then go to the upper body, the upper halves, from the waist up, and we want to separate that upper body from the lower body. We want the direction that our hips are facing, which is to the target, to be separate from the direction our shoulders are facing. So we notice, we can see the Giants, the Pirates, and his number. We can see the Phillies, and we can see the Brewers or Milwaukee. I'm not sure what they have displayed on their jerseys there. So the direction of their lower bodies is to the target, and the direction of their shoulders is still facing, for these right-handers, towards third base, or the direction they have been the entire time. So we rotate the lower body first, then we get into foot strike, then we rotate our upper body second. And the more that we can get those lower bodies to fully rotate to the target by the time that front foot hits the ground, and we've also been able to keep that upper body from rotating and staying back, we will have created as much upper lower half separation or hip shoulder separation as possible. And the more hip shoulder separation or upper lower half separation we can create, the more power we're going to be able to produce, and the amount of stress that's put on our arm is going to be reduced. What we're also going to notice is that almost regardless of your arm slot, if we have a true 3/4, low 3/4, high 3/4, an over-the-top arm slot, or anything in between those, we're always going to find ourselves in a relatively 90 degree angle, meaning from our elbow across to our other shoulder, we want to think is nice and even. 90 degrees in that armpit. We also want to think 90 degrees in that elbow. We want this type of arm position, that 90-90, we'll call it, at the moment of foot strike. When our arm has loaded up to this position here, at the moment of foot strike, and the upper body has not rotated yet, our body's rotation will accelerate the throw forward. If the arm is not in this 90-90 position, the body's rotation forward is going to be less than ideal and in sync with how the arm will flow after the body goes. So we're looking for this 90-90-ish position in that throwing arm at foot strike. What we can also notice at foot strike is, where is this glove at? It's in front of the body by the rib cage. We're not letting it If we're thinking, here's some water, don't drown the glove. Don't let your glove get wet. Don't drown that glove. This one right here is a little too high. Should be more towards the belt. Okay. When the glove gets finished into the body like this, it's able to help keep this front shoulder in line, meaning it's not going to open up early. Because if that front shoulder starts to open up early, that's going to start to pull the back shoulder forward early. And now we would not have separated our upper and lower halves as much because the angle of the shoulders would begin to rotate forward, which would be more matching the angle of the hips. The final thing we're going to look at is this front leg. We see all these guys have different degrees of bend in their front legs. But what we're going to notice is that as the upper body now rotates to throw, we need to make our front leg become a firm fixture of which we can rotate around. So thinking about this front leg here turning into a flagpole. My flagpole is always going to be strongest if it's straight. Or at least I can't have my flagpole move forward while my body is trying to rotate forward. So we'll redraw these little outlines here. And we will have these guys, oh man, that's all right, it's going to get back to it anyway. Boom. And now we'll watch as they go to throw. How that leg is locking out, stiffening up, straightening out. So that now that leg is here, now that leg is here, now that leg is here and here. From the bend, straightening it out. And what we can notice is as that leg locks out, stiffens up, straightens out, becomes that firm flagpole, notice how that upper body is able to catapult itself out in front and down more. Able to get out in front more. Out in front more. So that way, if we look, we can't get everyone exactly at release, but ball just out, ball just out, ball is coming out, ball is slightly a little bit more out than the bottom two. But we're able to look at this angle of the chin to the waist. Back out to the front foot. Boom, boom, boom. Just how out in front of themselves they're getting. And that's because of that front leg's ability to lock out. So we can see that they're starting, boom, boom, there, and there. So now it's not just the arm throwing the ball down. It's the body throwing the ball down. It's the body going down with the throw. Body accelerating down. And as the body's accelerating down, the lower half is firming up. So that way, as I need to finish all this violent rotation, I have the ability to do that around that firm front leg. I have that ability to rotate around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my back leg around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my hips around. I can finish all that violent rotation out of my back shoulder around. Giving my arm plenty of time to slow down and giving the back muscles, my scapular muscles, all the time they need to activate and slow down that rapidly accelerating arm. All right, now that we've gotten the chance to learn a bit about the pitching delivery, we have your two videos here synced up. We'll play it twice through. Second time we play it, we'll pause it at that moment of that front foot getting into the ground, and we'll be able to discuss some of our body's positionings compared to what we just learned with those big league examples. Okay, so here we are at that moment of getting that front foot into the ground, and like we learned from the side view videos, we want this back foot to have rotated forward, this back knee to have rotated all the way around, ultimately getting that back hip to go forward. And we can see as that front foot gets in the ground, that foot has not yet begun to rotate, and the knee really is just right about now is going to start to rotate. Really wants to start to rotate right there, and because the foot and the knee have not rotated, the back hip can't start to go forward yet. So if we had a belt buckle on, or a belt on, we would see the belt buckle is here, and so is the chest. And what we learned that we're trying to create with our body is that separation between the lower half and the upper half. Having that lower half all rotated towards the target by the time this front foot gets into the ground, right? And we can see that your front leg, your foot, knee, and hip are rotating forward as that front foot's getting into the ground, but the back side is not. If we continued onwards, we can see how much that back foot wants to rotate. We can see how much that back knee wants to rotate. We can see how much forward that back hip wants to go. But unfortunately, all of those are doing their movements at the same time these are going through. So now our entire back side of our body is rotating forward at the same time. We learned we want the lower body to go first. Front foot hit the ground. Upper body is fighting to stay back at that point. So then the upper body can rotate forward. And we can see is at this point in time, here's that throwing elbow. And once that throwing elbow starts to go this way, it's because you're starting your throw. And boom, boom, starting that throw before that foot's even in the ground. So now this baseball is over here when that foot's in the ground. We should either not see it because it's behind your head, or ultimately being able to see it over here because it's loaded up back and strong. If we continue this forward, because that arm is not loaded up and back where it needs to be, as you go to throw now, this elbow just drops down significantly, and now everything just drags and pushes through. Arm is just getting dragged through. Your arm slot is not sidearm, but that's the only way you can throw the ball, is because it's being thrown from this wonky arm position going this way rather than it being up here. So now as you go to rotate, arm's trying to catch up. It's getting left behind, and now it's just dragging through the zone. When the arm drags through the zone, we put tremendous stress on the arm, and our velocity gets killed. So we're going to really need to work on repatterning this arm to get it loaded up on time. And then we also need to learn how to fire this backside on time. It does the movements we want it to do. We just got to get them done before the front foot hits the ground. So we have to learn how to rotate your lower half, specifically your back leg, while you're only on your back leg, not once both legs get into the ground. We got to learn how to rotate all of this and then the front foot hits the ground. We can see the front foot hits the ground, and then we rotate everything around. So the lower half is rotating too late, and the throwing arm doesn't load up on time either. And because those two are not on time, when it comes time to throw, nothing is moving efficiently. And in fact, we are moving in a way that is adding tremendous stress on your throw, killing the velocity of your throw. And then we can see how your body then just kind of runs forward after that throw on this particular pitch rather than finishing through rotation. And that is also, again, being caused because of this arm not being on time and this back leg not doing its movements on time. So we just have to learn how we do this movement. We have to learn what it feels like to do this movement, so that way then you can engage and start that movement sooner. And then we got to learn how it feels to have the arm throw the baseball from a strong loaded position and not this weaker position. So that way when you throw the baseball, you'll learn where your arm slot needs to be, because this right here is not your actual arm slot. Because as we go to throw, we can see how much your elbow is dipping down. We need to be maintaining this 90-90 that we talked about in the big league videos. And as we rotate the shoulders around, this shoulder to elbow stays here on this plane. We can see yours very quickly dips down, and then it's got to go back up to get back on this plane. So you went here, and that's why we're sidearm. If we were able to stay on plane, you'd probably be somewhere in this area, probably, I'd have to imagine.